Hello and welcome back to Lash Journey Podcast. Today I'm joined by a very special guest. Her name is Ariel Renee. She is the co-founder of Flowrish Lashes. And I don't know about you, if you're not following her already, I am just obsessed with her content. I initially stumbled on her page from seeing something that my friend Shelby posted, and ever since, it's like every time her face pops up, I just love hearing her talk. She has a lot of great tips for the independent lash artist, and honestly, I can tell when when I consume her content that she just has a really great business mind, and I'm excited to have her on. This is actually my first time meeting her too, but there was a specific post that she posted. So I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but I wanted to introduce her here and hype her up a little bit. So everybody welcome Ariel. How are you?
I'm good. I'm super excited, honestly. I when you asked me to do this, I was like, of course. I'm so excited.
Cool. Yeah. So let's start. This is obviously the Lash Journey podcast. So, a big thing that I would love to know about you, I don't even know the background of how you got started. I know what you're doing now, but if you could tell us a little bit about where you started and the journey you've taken to get where you are now.
Yeah, for sure. So, it feels like honestly now thinking about it, it feels like a lifetime ago. But I would say that okay. So I was certified as a lash artist in 2016, and back then it was very no one knew what lashes were. So it was very much, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I honestly did it as like a side hustle. I was working at Sephora. I was a makeup artist at Sephora, and like makeup was my thing. And I was just like, I'm going to be a makeup artist. This is what I'm going to do. I had a job as a product developer for this company called, I think it was called Orchard, and they were a product developer for a lot of big makeup products, and that was supposed to be like my dream job. And they made like the Sephora Pro palette, like they did all these like amazing things, and that was supposed to be like my dream job. And then I quit after like 3 months, and then in that time, I actually had a big step back from lashing. I think I had taken like a year off because it was just so hard, and I was like, you know what? Maybe makeup is the way for me to go because this is just too difficult. Honestly, I just couldn't get my sets to look like other people's, and I didn't understand why. So when I had that job, I was like, oh, this is it for me. And then once I left that job because I could not do it, it was just so stressful, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And I think that was my first inkling of like, I don't want to work for somebody else because I hated that feeling of getting up early and working extremely hard, but working extremely hard for someone else's benefit. And I felt like that was just a big indication to me that maybe it wasn't for me. So I ended up quitting the job without a backup plan. And my husband now, my boyfriend at the time, was like, you know what? While you're looking for something else, you already know how to do lashes. Why not just pick up a couple clients while you're figuring it out? And I was like, I guess, yeah. I mean, it's not something I want to do, but sure, why not? My back was against the wall, and then I did. And then this time going into it, though, I had zero expectation. Like I just kind of was whatever comes of this comes of it, and if it's good it's good, and if it's not it's not. And then yeah, I think I took the pressure out of it. And then once I did that first set back, I was like, lashes is it, like this is what it is. Like I love this. Like, I just want to, I didn't think far in the future. I was just like, I need to get as many clients in as possible. Like I just want to do this all day all night for free. I just want to do it for free. I just want to do it. And then once that kind of took off, very, very quickly, I started to gain clientele because I was posting so much. And my husband, again, he's the one that tells me to do all these things, right? And he was like, we always wanted to have something for ourselves. And he was like, well, why don't we just try a product line? And I was like, okay. Like, I was like, okay, like why not? And then the goal was to actually have a very specific product that we got developed and everything. Actually, we like never even talk about this, but we had a product that was developed to kind of bridge the gap between makeup and lashes, because so many makeup artists didn't like when lash artists came or people came in with lashes. And we created this product that never saw the light of day because we were like, let's get a product line as a backing, and then we'll introduce the product. And then the product line took over. And then that was where Flourish was born. And then after that, I got into lash education and training, and then speaking in public all of a sudden. And then YouTube came very early on, and that kind of helped spiral everything. And then, yeah, here I am.
That's so awesome. So when did you start Flourish, and how did you come about with your co-founder? Like, how did that relationship form?
It's my husband.
Oh my goodness. You
Yeah.
know what? I didn't even know that. I was looking at your page and I saw some pictures of you and another girl and I was like, "Oh, okay. That's so cool."
Yeah, no, it's actually my husband. We did everything together. We like from the get go. Like the product line, even when I was trying to get better as a lash artist, he was trying to figure out how I could get better as a lash artist. He was like, okay, this training looks really good. You got to figure out the wispy sets. Like you got to figure it out. Like this is it. Like, and even I remember my first, not my first, but a really bad complaint from a client. I was freaking out, and he figured out what it was. And he was like, he was like always there. So yeah, he's my co-founder. And we started in well, Flourish started in 2019.
Nice. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So, what would you say? Definitely kind of like spinning this because I'm just thinking about my husband knowing anything about lashes and it would just be a disaster. So, how do you guys work well together? Like, if somebody is wanting to go into business with somebody that's so close to them, how do you kind of separate the responsibilities there and still continue to get along inside of work and outside of work?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I get this a lot because I think that, but the thing is like when I hear people speak about this, I think that Josh and I thrive in this environment, to be honest. Like, I think that it's something that has, I guess, because we started dating when we were like 15, right? Like 15, 16.
Oh,
So we were like high school sweethearts, and then we just kind of grew together. And in that growth came business and life and like, trying to do something more. So while all our friends were, this sounds so bad, but like while all our friends were like arguing about like stupid stuff, like I don't know, just dumb stuff. Like we weren't because we had so many other things going on. And even now, and I mean, we got married last year. So I would say that it was a long term relationship of like being boyfriend, girlfriend, and then getting into marriage. But this year hasn't really been much different in terms of us working together and uh, having a marriage. I feel like a lot of it, I mean, don't get me wrong though, like you're going to sleep at night and you're trying to fall asleep, and he's like, so did you email him? Or did you send the email? Did you do that? Like, do I need to call your assistant tomorrow? Like, and I'm like, can you please just let me go to bed? So like there's definitely aspects like that, but I think that one thing that works for both of us specifically is that we really and truly understand the bigger picture, and we understand what it takes. And I think that what happens is like so many people have this idea of wanting a relationship and wanting to get into something where you can build together because of course so many people on social media do it, but it's not easy if you guys are not like head and head in terms of the goal, the vision, the expectations that come with that as well. I think that that could get really messy, especially if one person didn't do something right or somebody didn't do something like this. Like we never argue about that stuff. We just look for solutions. And I think that also helps on the relationship side of things.
yeah, that sounds like absolutely amazing. And you're right, it is so easy, especially being so business minded. Like I'm always having these ideas and I always need extra help. And like, why not ask my husband? But I have definitely learned that it's anything to do with that is just not his strong suit. And I would never want it to be a situation where I felt like he was working for me. So it's like, I know that it works so well in some relationships and I admire it so freaking much. But yeah, I know that's not the way to go in mine.
It's
but
not like a lot of people. I think if you can understand that it doesn't work, then that's just as powerful. Like I think that the idea of forcing it is where things go downhill. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I've learned it the hard way. Like, even just giving him something's like, oh, like he's really good with spreadsheets. So I'm like, oh, I have an idea for a spreadsheet. Like, let's do XYZ. And like, he'll help me and everything. But I'm like, oh my gosh, what if we promoted this and then you're the one who's like inputting the stuff for the people? And it's like, yeah, no, I let him do his thing. He's like big into working with his hands, like carpentry. And, we find a way to make it work too. I mean, like, I'm opening up my training facility and stuff too, and he's the one doing the work for it. So it's like we balance each other out in that sense. But yeah, I think that's so cool, and I love hearing that backstory. So one of the things, one of the posts that you did that really, really stuck out to me recently was the 5 things that you wish you knew before starting your lash brand. And I think for me, it stuck out because it's something that's always seemed intimidating to me. It's, like I love running salons. I love teaching people about business, but that whole world has always just been so mystical to me. So
Yeah.
I would love to hear more from you. And I've never had anybody who owns a lash brand on the show before. So I'm really, really excited to just get into that. I'm sure the listeners are too. So let's kind of start with that. So the 5 things that you wish you knew before you got started. And the first thing that I noticed that you mentioned was prioritizing manufacturer relationships. Can you divulge on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that and this is like to kind of piggyback off that question a little bit. A lot of the questions that I get when people do ask about the product line is manufacturers, right? And I think that people always ask, how do you trust manufacturers, and like, how do you know you're not going to get burned, right? And I think that was something that happened to us very early on as well. Is that I think at the end of the day, when you go into something like this, there is no guarantee that you're not going to get burned. Nobody can really sit here and say that I went, into this relationship with this manufacturer, and I was like, yeah, they're gonna do so well for me, and they're gonna, they make all these promises, and there is a risk involved with that, right? We've gotten burned very early on, and that was it's worse. I feel like when you're early on in it, because you feel like you can't recover from that. But one thing I did learn is that when you have a deeper relationship with your manufacturers, especially when you start to realize they're conversationists, and then when they communicate with you, they're very nice. And obviously, it's because they want to build a relationship with you. And a lot of times, like, we're very cold, and we're just like, well, we just want the product. Like, there's nothing more than that. But at the end of the day, you're gonna run into hiccups, right? You're gonna run into mishaps, whether it's on your end, whether it's on their end, and the way that you're going to come out of them is honestly based on your relationship with them. Usually, most manufacturers, if you, let's say tweezers, for instance, if you're getting a specific tweezer from a certain supplier or a certain manufacturer, you have like a point person, right? So that one person is like the person you're dealing with. And you really need to nurture that relationship, because that person is your voice in the manufacturer, right? Like, that's the person that's going to advocate for you. So if something goes wrong, because I know early on, or kind of early on, like I don't know if you've seen, like, our boxes are pink, and when you get those boxes from the manufacturer, you're ordering like hundreds at a time, right? And there's a very good shot that it's not going to come out the same pink. Like, that's kind of what happens, right? And when you're obviously just kind of like talking to this manufacturer or talking to that point person as, just what they are, then they're not really going to help you, right? Like, I think that's something that really stood out to us, is that when we really did build relationships with certain people, we are still working with them from 2019 to now. And of course, the relationship builds over time, but once you start to get that block down or that wall down, you have a better flow of communication, and they're more willing to be a little bit more innovative with you. Ideas you can throw at them, they have their own graphic designers that they help bring back ideas to you. When you want to get something from scratch, like, they're more willing to do these things, right? And that goes with anything. And like I mentioned this too, is that at the core of anything is people, right? And being able to understand that will help you far beyond just your manufacturer relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I think you put it perfectly. And it's like, even if you do get burned, I love that you said it's like, don't let it slow you down, because it's going to happen. You just have to go into it knowing that this is most likely going to happen, and you kind of have to take the L and figure out how to pivot on forward, or else you're not going to make it. Because even if you're, I'm sure, 5 years from now, you're probably still going to hit a snag, or, you might be able to figure out how to pivot a little bit easier at that point. But yeah, I think that's really cool. And then you also mentioned something about inventory control. So that to me was like, oh my God, I don't even know where I would start with that. So kind of like walk me through your process. So you developed like start from the beginning. So you
Yeah.
reached out to these manufacturers, you started to develop some products. How did that process go? And then how did that turn into, oh my gosh, I have to order so many products and actually manage them at the same time?
Is honestly thinking back to it now, it was wild. Like it was wild in the sense that I knew obviously you have your core products, right? So in my mind, I was like, well, we can't do glue. That's too crazy right now. Like that, let's not go down that road. I'm like, let's go lashes, right? I'm like, let's do that. And obviously, you got to do the whole vetting process. You have to go through the supply, the samples, getting a ton of different samples, trying it on a ton of different people, being able to give yourself that, the analytics, the data to make sure that, you like what it is, right? At the end of the day, everything that we sold at the time was solely based on me and what I liked. And I was like, it was good and it was bad in a sense, right? It was good because it really represented, me and what I wanted it to kind of come out to. But then it was also kind of like, well, what about people who live in different climates? What about people who have, other situations? So I think like really understanding that we had to kind of expand. So expanding there first was great, but then the inventory control was wild. It was wild because we had zero anything. We had no systems, no. We were just ordering products. We were just like, yeah, like it's gonna work. Like it's fine. Like it's gonna be fine. And then I think one of the craziest things was realizing, obviously, like you know this, but when you order a product or you order a line of lashes, it's not like you're getting a couple lashes. You have to get every curl. You have to get every length, every diameter, every, yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like there's so many variations. So of course that ends up being like 500 lashes all of a sudden and you have nothing else, right? And then understanding that even if, 10, 11, 12, 13 are what's selling the most, that doesn't mean you can get rid of all the other lashes if you have to stock it, right? And that was hard too, is understanding that you have to stock it. And then the balance of 10, 11, 12, 13 being gone left, right, and center. And then figuring out like, okay, how do we, because then there's a big turnaround time as well, right? Between your supplier and getting it through your door. Sometimes it'd be weeks, sometimes it'd be a month, 2 months. Like it would take time, right? And by the time, let's say you're completely out, by then those customers you had are now gone. They're gone to a different brand that had the lashes that they had. And I think one of the biggest things to understand is you are not catering B2C, so business to consumer or customer. You're catering B2B, which is completely different when you're looking at it from like a business perspective, just because B2B means that people are reliant, their business is reliant on your business, which means your responsibility level is much higher. And that used to stress me out because I was like, oh my God, they hate us. Like, I'm like, they can't get any more supplies. They said they loved it and now it's gone. And like, that was so tricky. And it definitely took us some time to really understand how to come about a system that works. And when I say a system that works, it was more so understanding the importance of numbers and understanding the importance of making sure things were up to date on a regular basis. I think one thing that we used to do was just do like an inventory count like every, I don't know, maybe like every couple months or something like that, which was stupid now thinking about it. And we needed to do it very, very often. So until we started doing it more often, and having that direct number through our Shopify site, because everything's done through Shopify, and having the number on Shopify that was accurate, that was a problem we faced so much. I don't know why. the number on Shopify was just never accurate. So then it would throw everything else off. Some will say that they were like, you would take lashes and you would never. They're like, you're taking lashes and you're not telling anybody, and you're putting it, you're using it for your clients. You're not marking it off, which could have been true. And then being able to have that down packed was super super helpful. Once we got the numbers on, correct, and we were doing constant inventory uh, counts, and then being able to have that in Shopify, that's when we were able to keep track of things. And also understanding that we needed to have at least a 2 month time frame in terms of turnaround for the lashes.
Yeah, that's mind blowing to me. And especially because I'm sure when you first started, you probably didn't have, that many sales. And how quickly did you guys actually scale with that? And was that hard to navigate? Because it's like you get down to like one system and you're like, okay, I need to order every like 2 to 3 weeks. I need to like put this in or whatever that order is. And now all of a sudden, like you blow up. And I'm sure that all changed, right?
Well, that's the thing. It was like I think the first year and a half was so hard because certain items would sell, and then, repurchasing wasn't so bad, but then other items would sell, and then that repurchase process was much longer. And then, trying to keep track of like, okay, are we getting one sale a day? Are we getting like 10 a week? Like, what is that? Right. And then that was where I think that's the hardest part, is that beginning phase, because you have no real consistent flow. And it's hard to even think about dishing out this large amount of money and having this large amount of product and even storing the product. Like, where's that going? And then not knowing when it's actually going to be done. Right. And having that collect on the shelf. I would say that, so 2019, 2020, believe it or not, we did amazing in pandemic. It was so weird.
That's
I don't know.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really weird though. Like, I just don't know why, but I guess people were searching for more products, or they were more open-minded. I don't know, but we actually got our first office, or well, our office now, in pandemic, because everything was running out of my mom's basement. And that was it. And then that was kind of like our inventory control was in my mom's basement and shipping out of my mom's basement. And then in pandemic, I think it was 2021. 2021, yeah, 2021 May, we got our office, which houses all of our products now. But we did really well. We started, but the problem was that, yes, we were doing well. Like, people were getting the hang of us, and every month was getting better. Every month was, going up. But then that was also scary, because then it's like, well, at this rate, what if I buy a ton of products and things go down a little bit? And it did, right? Like, we ended up projecting out, and we're like, okay, well, now we need a larger level of inventory. And then it's so weird. I like never talk about this, but it's so weird that, so my husband and I got married last year. And when we got married, of course, you've been married, you know this, that a wedding takes over your life, right? And it took over, we had a large wedding, and it took over my entire life. And when it did, the business took a hit, right? Like, it's just what happens. Like, it's just what it was, because my face is our business, right? Like, being up in front of the camera, YouTube was a big part of our business. And because I was so caught up in the wedding and trying to get everything done, I couldn't be as present. And we had ordered a ton of product, and then all of a sudden things were at a standstill. And we could not figure out why until after we got married. And then we're like, okay, it's because I was not there. Like, I wasn't, YouTube videos weren't going up. My face wasn't on Instagram. Like, it just wasn't, the flow wasn't there anymore. And these are things that happen, right? Like, anything can really take a hit. So I would say that our biggest learning lesson from that, though, was putting in infrastructure, putting in systems, putting in a support of some sort where it isn't so reliant on me.
Yeah, what does that actually look like? I was going to ask because what you just said about like having your face on there, and it's like with brands, and because there are so many out there these days, I feel like the number one thing that connects people to buying from a specific brand is connecting with the face of the brand, or the CEO, the person, the morals that they have, what they stand for. And so, yeah, even that with my mentorship stuff, if I'm not I'm not putting content out there, of course the inquiries slow down. If I stay consistent with it, it picks up. And it's just the world we live in. Look at the way that we consume, we buy things too. It's like it has to constantly be in our face for us to get it. And it can be really tiring and taxing on business owners at times. It's nice that we have the ability to be able to turn it up when we need to and turn it down when we just can't take on the capacity. But it's definitely a very big lesson. What do you think was the big thing? Was it YouTube that really helped your line kind of like take off? Because there are so many people out there that I feel like are trying to start their own lines, but they don't see the kind of success that you've seen necessarily. So if, what would you say were the biggest things that helped push your brand forward?
YouTube 1,000% was it happened blindly. Like I had no idea. I started doing YouTube for makeup, and then when I switched to doing one lash YouTube video, that was it. And then I had to give up my dreams of being any type of makeup artist. And I was like, this is it. It has to be lashes. And then I ended up just, progressing through lashes, and it just flowed. Now the thing that I think that people are so afraid of is like, oh, well, that was at that time. And, things are different now. There's so many other YouTubers. And I completely understand that. But I wouldn't say that it was because of the fact that my face was out there so much. I think it was the information, because no one knew who I was. Like, it's not like they were going to my YouTube videos because they wanted to see me at that time. Like maybe now, but at the time it was just because they wanted the information, right? It was just the fact of the educational aspect. And I think that that's something that can still happen today. And I think that's something that people are getting a little bit more comfortable with, in terms of putting themselves out there on their social medias, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. But YouTube is still very, I think, in the lash niche, is still very underdeveloped. And then I think now what's happening is that there's a level of expectation that people are trying to kind of flow with. And I think that what made my YouTube channel, do so well was I genuinely was just like talking. Like I had no expectations. Like I was just like, I know this, let me show you, and I think that it's a little bit diluted now. And I think that there's like this expectation of aesthetics that has to be portrayed. And yeah, I get it. The quality of content is, the level is, the standard's much higher now. But I still think that we could be very authentic with the content and be very, transparent about, your journey and who you are and what you want for the industry and so on and so forth. And it would still convert. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that's why platforms like TikTok and stuff have really taken off, because it's a lot less like, doesn't have to be so perfectly curated. And I know that it's definitely like a perfectionist thing of me where I'm like, oh, if I'm going to show up, if I'm going to show my face, like everything has to be like great. And it's like, you have to just get over that, because people don't want to see the perfect. They want to see the real. And that's how people connect with people, like you said.
Yeah. No.
So another thing that, I think that we could touch on really quickly, but the third thing was investing in good copy, which I'm a huge proponent of, and imagery. So did you start off with doing that, or did you kind of add an upgrade the quality of that later?
Honestly, I will say that, and this, I think this comes from my husband more so than it comes from me. I was just kind of like, let's get the content out there. And he was very much like, no. He was like, I have a standard to uphold. Even when it came to, I would even say our lash boxes. So our lash trays, right? Now, this is something that I think is so crazy, especially because we were no one at the time. Like we were just starting out as a brand. And we were actually one of the very first companies that had that fold out box for lashes. Like
No
no one
way.
had that. Nobody had that. That was something that my husband literally was like, let's do this. And I was like, no, let's get the plastic tray. Like no one's doing this. This isn't a thing. And he's like, no, let's do it. Like I'm telling you, let's do it. And then after that, I saw all these brands go down that road. And I was like, it's insane that you even had this thought. But that's the thing. He's very much, he holds himself to a standard of content and aesthetic, right? So he was like, if we're doing it this way. And then in terms of the actual content, I always had a professional camera because I was doing YouTube and I was just trying to upgrade on that level. So we were taking the content ourselves. Like we were doing everything in the beginning. But we were still doing it to a level which we felt was not so DIY, if that makes sense. Like even though we were doing the content ourselves, we still had like a level of studio lighting. We still had a level of backdrop. And I thought it was good. Like I thought it was cute. And then he was like, "No, it's not." He was like, "This is not it." And I was like, "Okay." So we ended up, I would say, maybe a year into it, which wasn't very long. Excuse me. he he was like, "Yeah, we're gonna hire somebody. We're hiring someone to do the content. We're hiring not to do the content, sorry, to do the product imagery." He was like, "This is not it. Like, we need professional product images specifically for our website," because he's like, "The site needs to look good." And I was like, "Okay, so no problem." And then, to be honest, once we took that jump into getting the professional product images, everything started to kind of upgrade a little bit, even the YouTube side of things. So once we got our office, then we had even better lighting and we had a better camera, and like everything started to spiral. And literally, as of, I mean, like we're always trying to upgrade and we're always trying to get better, but then even as of last week, we actually finally hired our first social media manager. So now we're trying to make it
Really?
even better.
I was going to say, I could probably like totally go off on a tailspin on that too, because it's like, even though you're so good at it yourself, and I feel like you're so great with your messaging, it is so much to handle.
Oh my God, that's
Like,
two jobs. I think that's
and
one
it's,
job. That's two jobs.
and especially because you're doing training too. So it's like, how do you get all of that to kind of like flow together, plus worry about, the growth of your company and all of that stuff. The analytics part that I want to talk to you about next was like something that really stuck out for me, because like not only are you at the forefront of your business, but you're also on the back end too. Like you guys are doing everything yourself. So how, like, as you started to grow, in that post specifically, you were like, I knew nothing about what I was getting into. You're like, I just threw myself into it. So how did you learn, as things were growing, what markers to look for and how to like use those markers to figure out where you needed to put your effort towards next?
Yeah, I think that there's so much there's so much that goes into that, to be honest. And it's because, again, like my husband and I getting into this, just because we knew what we wanted to do, we genuinely didn't know how to get there. We didn't know what to do to get there. We didn't know which pieces to move to kind of move forward. And it was all really trial and error. So I would say that as we progressed, we were so like, I guess we were so wishy-washy with the numbers. Like we weren't numbers people in that sense, but we were constantly looking at the numbers and like trying to figure out these things. And I don't know if you've ever heard this, but they say that like a typical business owner will take 5 years until they start actually getting some shit done, right? And I think that that is very fair, because I would say that this year specifically has been our biggest growth year, and not monetarily, like not in terms of sales. I would say within us and our company, in terms of making moves that really mattered. So I would say that one of the things I think we struggle with, and I think this comes down to us also being women, I think that we are not necessarily control freaks, but we also want to have a hand in everything, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I feel like we're just very like, you know, I can do it. I can do this and I can do that and I can do that. And then you see someone else do it, like, but I can do it. It's okay. I can do it. Right. And I think that that's something that I had to definitely work on. And I think that was a big factor in us moving forward. And it was like one of those pillars that made a difference, specifically with YouTube. I was so adamant on my content, and I was like, I have to edit the videos. Like there's no other option. And they literally had to like pry my hands off the edits. Okay. And I was like, okay, I guess, like, and today I'm so grateful I don't have to edit another video and it's a good time. Okay. But I would say that in terms of like things that grew with us, I think that being able to hand things off is how you grow, right? In terms of analytics specifically, if Josh and I were doing absolutely everything up until today, because we were, I would say, up until the beginning of this year, um, there we had such a problem with growth and we had such a problem remaining stagnant, and it was because our hands were maintenance. We were trying to maintain everything, right? And I think that once we were able to kind of stop working within the business and was able to work on the business, we were more so able to hand things off. And then, you know what? I'm able to get data from this person. I'm able to get data from that person. Meaning, like, what's converting, what's not converting. Specifically, like one thing, because I know we were talking about inventory control too, is when we understood what was selling and what wasn't selling. We have this application is called Orange Theory. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so basically what it does, it's like a heat map. So let's say your customer's on the website and they're scrolling through, it'll show you right where they dropped off. So let's say they were interested in a specific product and maybe they added it to cart and then they saw something else, they dropped off. So you could tell where the copy went wrong or where they were disengaged, right? So things like that, we were much more able to kind of understand once we started delegating things, because now we could read more into that and actually do something about it. Does that make sense?
Yes, that is so cool. What is your, and this is like a technical question, but what is your, oh my gosh, where's your domain header or your host for your website that has that type of, you said it's an application?
Yeah, it's like so everything's through Shopify.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is so freaking cool. I could learn about that stuff all day long, literally. Like, I'm such a nerd for that.
You know what? I'm actually not. I don't. Listen, if you put me there, my head will explode. Okay, like this is why my husband and I work so great together, because he deals with all of that stuff. I know a lot of it. Like I've dealt with a lot because him and I were doing everything. But now, like today, like I don't really do much of that because I'm so caught up with the other side of things, and so he takes on that stuff. But there's a ton. There's so like I want him to be so much more involved, like on the face, because there's so much knowledge that he has on like the back end of things that he could share. And I'm just like, you could give so much more than I could. Like,
But I mean, it's like your face is the one that people connect with and the one that draws them
yeah.
in, and that's what makes you guys work so well together. Is because
Mhm.
like you have like we were talking about earlier. It's like you really do know your roles, and even just talking to you, it's like you know what your level of genius is, and you know what his level of genius is too. And it's
Definitely.
so cool that now like what you said about starting to delegate and no longer working in your business, or you still are, but you're starting to take a little bit of a step back and starting to delegate these things that are taking so much time, like the a lot of the analytics, the social media and stuff too. And that's so cool to hear you talk about in this realm of things too, because that's what I preach so much on the other side of business, like with salons and everything. It's like
Yeah.
if you don't set up your business to run without you, you're never going to be able to grow. You can only
Yeah.
hold so much.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So what is the last, like the biggest thing that you wish you knew before getting started here, especially when it comes to your customers?
One thing that I wish I knew, and it's something that it's crazy because, like, again, drawing it back to my husband, is we talk about this. Like, we talk about business all day, like all day. He'll just call me and we just talk about business. And one thing that I've kind of learned this year specifically is that, and I think a lot of people are making this mistake, is that we're so fixated on the products. We're so into the product development, which I get because, of course, you want to have good products. But at the end of the day, going into a supply line, going into a business like this, your job as an owner is actually marketing. Your job has very little to do with getting the product in. Once the product's in, the product's in. Now what? Like, it's all about marketing. And if you don't have that part down packed or care to put more into it, then there's no point. Like there's nothing that can be done without that. And you're going to realize that, once things kind of start rolling, that is what you do all day. Like that is literally what your entire day consists of. You're going through features and benefits of products. That's all marketing. Understanding what this is going to do for somebody else. That's all marketing. How are you going to relay that message? All marketing. How does it tie into your brand awareness? How does it tie into your brand identity? Like that's your job as an owner in this industry. And I think like you touched on it too. And I know you said that a lot of people don't understand that. And I think that when you are a solo lash artist and you envision being a brand or having, a supply line, I think that that's absolutely amazing. But I also think that there's so many more resources out there now today than there was, 5 years ago to prepare you or to better prepare you now to get into that and understand the expectation. Because if I had known things that I know now back then, I know for sure I would have been a lot further, a lot faster. As I'm sure we can all say. But yeah, marketing is literally everything. Marketing and numbers are your entire business.
Yes. And that goes for like just about anything, but I think with products so much more so because again, there are so many people out there and it's like, what are you going to do to stand out from the crowd? Like, what are you going to do differently? What is your, your leverage piece that's going to make people want to buy from you specifically?
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's been so great talking to you. Where can people find you if they want to get into your content more? I know you have your YouTube page, but can you tell people where to find you?
Yeah, so I have my YouTube page, which is Ariel Renee, and then I have our Flourish Lashes page. So on Instagram, it's at Flourish Lashes, and then you can also go onto my personal. On my personal, it's at Ariella. I talk a ton about this stuff, honestly. Yeah, so you can find me on those two platforms, and kind of on TikTok, but not really. So let's not go there. Like,
Same.
um, yeah, it's a rocky situation over there. But thank you so much. Honestly, Tiffani, this was amazing. I'm so grateful that we had this conversation just because I think that we're like in this industry specifically, we're so focused on the skills and techniques. And I love that you're doing things on a different level because I think that this is what the industry like truly needs.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And I cannot wait to meet you in person at Lash Boss Summit. You're speaking there too, right?
Yes.
Yes, so excited. Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, you guys check her out. You will not be disappointed. Like I said, she's one of my favorites to watch. So thank you again. And for everyone listening, we'll see you soon.